happening perfectly. It shouldn't have happened like that. No, it happened perfectly.
All right, so now we are live on Zoom, and Dove and Myrna. I'm going to go ahead and put up our little fireplace, only because I think it's really cute.
It shouldn't have happened like that. No, it happened perfectly.
All right, so now we are live on Zoom, and
Oops.
Dove. I'm hearing myself again. All right, here we go. Yeah, I'm putting up the little fireplace so you guys can
Okay.
have a cozy hearth.
We need it today. It's cold. I'm sure it's cold where you are, Doug.
Definitely cold, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel we're getting it in Florida, so I can imagine how it must be where you are.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice and cozy with the fireplace, really.
Yes, it's nice. You know what we were saying before, that everything, there were no accidents, and that whatever we say, the synchronicity, which comes in a sea of love, uh, a sea of synchronicity, and an ocean of love. I like that. And it makes, if we could only embody that and only recognize that that's really what it is, we never worry about anything. Recognizing that there's nothing that we need to do. That tells me right then and there that there's just nothing we need to do. It's all set up for us.
That's right. But also is the same thing as what can you not accept? It's all about acceptance. But the ego is into resistance. It says, why is this happening to me? Instead of saying, uh, what is this teaching me? I came here for a lesson. What is the lesson? But the ego doesn't come for lessons. It wants to be right. And if it's not winning, it says, wait a minute, something is wrong.
Yeah, well, the ego wants to be right,
Yeah,
doesn't want to be wrong. It doesn't want to know love, really. It wants its own way. We begin to learn more about the ego the more we learn about ourselves, and recognizing the two parts within us that we exist in. And we're constantly in flux between the two worlds, the ego's world and God's world. And the wonderful thing about A Course in Miracles is that it's so systematic that when we rely on what it's teaching us, wanting to learn it, wanting to accept and embody it, we become much better at it, much better at the healing process, the peaceful aspect of really who we are. I mean, that's what we are. We have that within to experience. So, yeah, it's just a matter of knowing it, trusting is such a tremendous thought, because once we trust, then we know that we're just completely safe, completely protected. We are. And it's that trust, that faith in God. I'm constantly looking at God in that respect, and reaching out. Even if I have an unpleasant thought, it's gotten to the point where I know that it doesn't belong there. It comes at will. It really does. We think we have we have no choice, that we have that we just don't have the ability to avoid it, and we don't, perhaps, but that's okay as long as we just let it go. And so really that is the practice that takes place when we begin to learn the concepts and the principle of the Course in Miracles. It's about practice and the lessons done faithfully. The lessons, I love the lessons. Today's lesson number 30, perfect lesson. I can't believe it's the 30th day of the month, the 30th day of January. God is in everything I see because God is in my mind. That's what we're talking about. God is in my mind. And if God is in my mind, it doesn't mean that we need to withdraw from the world at all. And not only that, I think all relationships give us valuable opportunities to learn, to heal, to awaken. So in other words, everything is meant the way it should be. But when we see with the mind, it gives us the understanding of love's presence. That's what we really need to learn, the understanding that it's there. Anyway, I turn it over to you, Doug.
Yeah, okay, yeah, the ego only sees the past. As long as you see the past and you're always trying to get better or have more, which is the ego's idol, I want to have more, I don't have enough, I lack. The past was a place that I don't want to go back to. You can't be in the present, which is where you accept all things exactly the way they are. It's in the present that you can actually accept. It's only in the present that you can really know yourself, know your brother as the same, as equal. It's only in the present can you really know God. There is no past other than our belief, which is a lie that the past really happened. He tells you, the only reason I am upset is I see only the past. The first 7 lessons ends in lesson 7. I see only the past. And he starts out by saying, that's the reason the first 6 lessons are true. Number 5 is I'm never upset for the reason I think I'm upset, because I'm looking at the past. Nothing here means anything. If I think something means something, which is lesson 1 and 2, it's only because I gave it meaning in the past. But in the present, the ego has nothing to say in the present. In the present, spirit is the voice you're really listening to. Now, on lesson 30, I just want to give the Ken Wapnick commentary. I'll also put in the room. God is in everything I see because God is in my mind. Really? Okay, God is in everything I see because God is in my mind. And Ken says when our minds are awake, which means we're right here, right now, and we see Jesus' love, everything we saw before in the past will disappear. But if I keep looking in the past, it's not going to disappear because I'm making the past meaningful, important. He says, he goes on to say, our judgments against others from the past and against ourselves from the past are strange ways of understanding events. All will disappear. And, if you follow Gary Renard, I know that Lynn Johnson certainly follows Gary. That's how she got into the course. It's the disappearance of the universe, but that doesn't mean the universe is going away. It means my belief, my lies, the things I've told myself that I believe are true will disappear. He tells you that in Responsibility for Sight, chapter 21, section 2, which you find on page 448 of the textbook. And what he's saying there is, everything that seems to happen to me, I have asked for and I have received exactly as I have asked. Really? You mean the things in my childhood? Yes, the things in my childhood happened exactly the way I asked. Why? Because I came here to learn lessons. The world is a classroom. It's not an oyster where I was born on the wrong side of the tracks, the wrong parents, the wrong this, the wrong that. I shouldn't. I should have been born differently. No, you were born perfectly. You asked for it and you received it exactly as you have asked. That's Responsibility for Sight, chapter 21, section 2. And then he goes on to say, deceive yourself no longer, that you're helpless, a victim in face of what was done to you, but acknowledge that you are mistaken. Oh, a mistake? You mean it's not a sin? It's a mistake. That's right. If you acknowledge it's a mistake, all your mistakes will disappear. That's why they have erasers, to erase mistakes. That's what the Holy Spirit does. He looks at your mistakes and smiles and laughs. What you think is true isn't true. You gotta laugh. Over to you.
Yeah, I'm just reading something about what the Course says about the past too. The past becomes the justification for entering into a continuing unholy alliance with the ego against the present. And the past, when you think about it, we think the past is real and we cherish it. We do, we look back and we have memories that are not pleasant. Even the pleasant memories, they're not real anymore. I mean, they're there and they're nice to have, but when we start to nurture the unpleasant ones, then we attack ourselves, and that's where the differentiation occurs between peace and feeling not peaceful, feeling attacked, feeling that that we lose it. We lose the true concept of what we're here to learn. And God gives us all different scenarios in which to learn from. And if we use them wisely, recognizing that that's what we're really here to do, to learn our intended purpose, then there's no more reason to feel that we're unjustly treated, that we were born into the wrong family, or whatever it is that the ego conjures up, which is not real. And I like what you said. And you said, even as young children, I went through a lot of difficulty as a young child, which caused me to really suffer a lot in my early adulthood. Recognizing now that I absolutely understand why I needed to learn those lessons. For one, I think we all need to learn forgiveness. And how do we know what forgiveness is unless we have something that we need to forgive? And then we learn what it's all about. But the ego defies that. The ego doesn't like that we're forgiving. The ego will tell us, no, you're a threat. You're a threat to my whole thought system. And so it's not about fighting with the ego. It's not about now coming into doing battle with it. We just, then I don't feel that way. I really don't. Because now I have another thought system, another one that I rely on, that really, where when I'm relying on that thought system, then I'm feeling the love of the Holy Spirit coming into me, that love, that tingling love, saying, yes, you got that right. Now let's just move on. And I think all our lives, what we do is we waver back and forth. But once we realize that it isn't real, and that we have, that we are responsible for our sight, which today's lesson, the lesson is number 30, God is in everything I see because God is in my mind. I'm just going to read from Private Lessons with Jesus, from A Course in Miracles, Private Lessons with Jesus. One of the lessons I did with Jesus on my own with him, by asking him to tell me what I'm hearing from him personally about the lessons. Number 30, God is in your mind because he shares his with you. In studying the Course through the years, you have come to learn that its basic and most important lesson is forgiveness. We were talking about that just now. Until you became tutored by your brother Jesus on the strength of forgiveness, you did not know that it was the prime ingredient leading the way to peace. You never knew the impact of an unforgiving mind had on your own outlook, which was a perception of a dismal and sorrowful world. The world is made up of the thoughts you project into it. By giving up the thoughts you do not share with God, you become free in spirit, and your heart is lightened of its heavy burdens. It is easier to forgive another when you are not in judgment of him. When thoughts of hate are projected, you do not see yourself in God. You can only become enriched by letting God shine away your fears. He is indeed in everything you seek because he is in all things. God is in everything I see, of course, because God is in my mind. It just reverts back to the title. And if God is in my mind, and that is what my mind is made up of, then I'm nothing less than that. And that's it's a good feeling. It's a good thought. It's a good way to it's reason to rejoice. Thank God it's like that. Thank God. I'm not the demon that I thought I was, that I don't have to hold anything against myself, that I'm truly forgiven for everything I think I did. And then when we feel forgiven, then it's easier to forgive others. If I'm forgiven, then how can I not now make it incumbent upon myself to forgive the world? And the world is what, how we how we determine to see the world. So again, as I said before, we're not, meant to withdraw from the world. We're in the world, but we don't have to be of the world. All relationships and all thoughts, and everything that's happened, really, even early childhood memories, offer opportunities for healing, for forgiveness. And if our mind is lit up with the presence of God, of course that's what we'll see. If my mind lights up with the presence of God, then how can I not see that? I turn it back to you, Dove.
Okay, thank you so much for reading from your book. The Lessons of the Course in Miracles is given to you by Jesus, which you scribe. Thank you. I was listening to Prudence, who plays, of course, Ken Wapnick every single morning. And this morning, he got into playing something which I heard many years ago. It's called 2 + 2 = 5. And I remember when I went to Temecula, I said, what do you mean 2 + 2 = 5? He says, I'll give you. He actually went into the bookshop and got me the workshop audio recording, which was like a CD, an MP3 CD, whatever. And he gave it to me. He says, yeah, go home and listen to it. I listened to it many years ago, but today I heard it really very powerfully for the first time. It's like you only hear something when you're ready to hear it. So he starts off, which I did not know, that title, 2 + 2 = 5, did not start with him. It came from Dostoevsky, the Russian novelist, but I didn't know that he was also he was also like Freud. He was like a psychoanalyst, and he knew that something wasn't right in the world, because the world is always changing from one form to another, but in the unconscious, something that's going on. And, in this world, when you grow up, your parents tell you, you got to do this, you got to do that. If you want to be successful, you got to do this, you got to do that. And that's the 2 + 2 = 4 world, where if you add it all up and you do the right thing, you should be a success and you should win. But maybe what God creates has nothing to do with winning. And that's why in chapter 25, The Justice for God, which is what we're doing on Monday afternoons at 1:30 in our Zoom class, I see that as such a powerful section, chapter 25, and there's 9 sections to it, ending in the justice of heaven. And he's explaining there the same thing that we're talking about, that what God creates is all equal. Nothing opposes anything. No one has to win at somebody else's expense of loss. Either we're all in this together as one, or we're not. God didn't create two. He extended himself and gave his son all that he is. So going into the original math, 1 + 1 = 1. The ego says, no. The mathematics is 1 + 1 = 2, because the ego sees two-ness or duality, because the ego is part of a body. I'm over here, you're over there. We're certainly separate in where we are. So space tells us that we're separate, and time also says we're separate. Like I'm at this age, you're at that age. I wasn't here. You weren't here when I was born, and you know, and somehow when I'm not here, any when this body is not here, others are being born into this world. It seems like there's a revolving door, but the world is always at war. Why is that? So Dostoevsky came up and he wrote the original book, 2+2. Actually, his book is 2 times 2 equals 4. And somehow Ken Wapnick came up with 2+2 equals 4. So it's the same thing. But the prime lesson is not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = 1. Thy will be done. Our will is one. Our will is done. There's only one will. As he says in lesson 101, God's will for me is happiness. And then in lesson 102, it says, and I share the same will for happiness. It's not that we have different wills. In this world, it seems like our will is different than my parents' will, and my brothers and sisters don't really like me, and people at school, they don't like me. But that has nothing to do with reality. So it gets down to, what is your purpose? If your purpose is to be right, you're going to listen to the ego's version of 1 + 1 = 2. But if you want the truth, if purpose is meaning, he tells you that in lesson 25, only purpose is meaning. So if your purpose is you really want to know God's mind, which is I and the Father are one, we are one, not two, then you want the truth of creation. Why would you go through a world your entire life living in the past thinking that 2 + 2 = 4, when as a matter of fact, that's the ego's rules? It says you better live by my rules if you want to win. And that's why you go to lesson 76, which is I'm under no laws but the laws of God. And in lesson 76, Jesus is kind of making fun of the laws of medicine, the laws of finance, the laws of nutrition, the laws of health. He says those aren't laws. You're under no laws but the laws of God. And the laws of God is what I give to myself. There's only one. There's nothing outside of me. And I just want to mention, ACIM Gather had somebody many years ago, it was around 2007, 2008, invited her, and she does the 72 mitzvahs of the name of God, which is in the Hebrew thing, the 72 names. One of them is Chai, which is one of my favorites, Chai. So she did a chant. She's a chanter, and she plays these songs. So I invited her to come to ACIM Gather. It was a Saturday night, and she logged on to ACIM Gather, and one of the 6 or 7 songs that she played is 1 × 1 = 1. 1 × 1 = 1, and it just keeps repeating it over and over. 1 × 1 = 1, 1. So it's not 1 + 1, it's 1 × 1 becomes 1. And that's exactly how the Son of God was created. That's how the Christ was created. It's God extended himself into oneness, and his Son was created. We call the Son the Christ. The Father and the Son are one, not two. Over to you, Myrna.
When I first discovered the Course in Miracles, it was an easy concept for me because I always believed that it was a dream. I used to say that this is a dream. I think Shirley MacLaine wrote a book about that. That's where I got it from, where it's all a dream. She was very spiritual, Shirley MacLaine, an actress, but she put out books to that effect. And I certainly bought into that right away, saying that, yes, it only makes sense that it is all a dream. It has to be a dream, because, you know, when you look at it, it really does make sense that we're just dreaming, because, you know, and then I used to use funny little concepts like, well, if it's a dream, well, why do we drive cars? Because in our dream, we want to go from place to place. So we invented cars in our mind. You know, whatever it was that why do we, want to wear nice clothes? Well, we invented the fact that we want to look good. We want to look a certain way. And so therefore we dreamed it. So I kept conjuring up different thoughts that sort of validated those beliefs. And then when the Course in Miracles came along and validated that it's all a dream anyway, I really delved into it, I think, because I really got a head start before that. And I was able to absolutely accept that. Now, whether we live by it or not is our choice, because now the responsibility is for us to know that the dream is what we're living, what we're seeing, what we believe is true. And even after I embodied the Course and got into the Course, things happen every day that take us away from that, and we think it's real. And but if we begin to see that the Course is all truth, it's all fact, and it's not a religious teaching, it teaches us to practice those truths, then it really does become easier to see that even more clearly. You know, yesterday I was driving. Okay, I'll give you an example. Driving along, and I went around a car. Okay, the car was stopped at a stop sign. I didn't see the stop sign. I went around him, and everything was fine. But then I started doing a number on myself. What if somebody was walking across the street and I went around this car, and what if I hit him? And my mind started blowing this whole thing out of proportion. I kept seeing that I'm hitting a person who's crossing the street. This is what's going through my mind. And and this is bothering me all day. I can't seem to get rid of that thought. It just keeps coming up. And then last night I was listening. I started to stream Susan Michelle, and Zulma was with her too, I believe. And those words, everything, you are exactly where you are supposed to be. That's what she said. And that's exactly where I was supposed to be at that moment. So I couldn't have done anything different. And then I heard Zulma say, we live in a should house. She calls it a should house. We should have done this, we should have done that. I love that, because that's something that, I really, it was a little quip, but it really made a lot of sense. I should have done this and I should have done that. And once we can really get away from the beliefs of the ego and condemn ourselves, I mean, those thoughts yesterday were really getting in the way of my peace. I realized it. What if I would have hit someone? I mean, I was fine. Nothing happened. It was okay. But there again, I wanted to just share that, because this happens, even though I'm a student of A Course in Miracles, even though I value the concept and the principles so much so that I'm willing to speak about it because it works. But even though that I feel that way and live by it, things are going to happen, and it's how we handle it. I could have, taken that unholy thought further, but I was able finally to drop it. And like you say, Dove, we got to laugh at it. I just turned to page chapter 21 in A Course in Miracles. I am responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience, and I decide upon the goal I would achieve. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. And as you were saying before, as you said, nothing is by accident. It's what we asked for. Whatever the reasons are, it doesn't even make a difference what the reasons are. They're there to heal us. Even the mistakes that we make are there to heal us. But we don't have to solve those problems by ourselves. We just have to ask Jesus. You know, I find too, when I'm having an unholy thought, I'll ask Jesus for a different way to look at it. And his words always come through to me. Whatever it is, the words do come through. Jesus, please give me a different way to look at this. And the words, and then once those thoughts, and he always answers, and there's always an answer that will take us away from the unholy thoughts that we're experiencing and bring us to another level of peace. I find that to be true. And it works for me. It does work. I don't know why it took me so long yesterday to get into that with Jesus. You know, why I kind of nurtured that thought of that I could have hit somebody. Why that bothered me so much when it was just a fantasy. It was a made up thing. So I turn it over to you, Dove.
Okay, that's a great story, Myrna, because, you know, as you're telling the story, it kind of recognizes, makes us aware that we live in two different worlds. And the reason we live in two different worlds is we have two different thought systems. One is the ego's thought system, which is called our wrong-mindedness, and one is spirit's thought system, which is our right-mindedness. Now, I'll give an example of my own driving habits. I don't have the exact same as you, but mine are just as insane, literally. And I have to keep going into my right mind to recognize that whatever I do, I'm doing to myself. Like I'll be going down the road at 40 miles an hour, say, and a car's coming. It's one of these things. There's only one lane over here, and I'm going, say, east, and this other person is going west, and he's coming at 40 miles an hour. And believe it or not, into my mind comes the thought, what if I crossed over the yellow line and hit him at 40 miles an hour? It's like hitting a wall. He's going 40. It's like hitting a wall at 80 miles an hour.
That happens to me all the time. I just had to say that. That was that exact thought. Go ahead with that because you just wrote something.
That's part of insanity. And I always look over at Happy, who's sitting right in he's sitting on this thing between the passenger seat and the driver's seat. And I look over, I said, no, I wouldn't do that to Happy. So that keeps me sane. It keeps me sane to say, no, I wouldn't do that. But you know, Jesus says that there's a murderer in all of us. So when you're driving on the road, there's millions of drivers, millions and millions of drivers, and you have to really trust that everybody's in their sane mind. Because what's the difference between a guy who takes a gun out and shoots somebody and somebody who's in a car who just rams right into another car? You know, but we don't do that. Mostly we don't do that. But you know, if we go to the section called the borderland, that's where the two thought systems really kind of meet, and we have to choose which one is sanity and which one is not. I mean, I'm not totally insane anymore. I mean, I used to be insane. I used to do a lot of insane things. I'm not talking about driving a car into another car. I'm talking about a lot of things that were totally crazy, had nothing to do with truth. It had everything to do with getting what I want, doing the things where I win at the expense of someone else's losing. That's how the ego operates. You know, the ego doesn't have to kill somebody. Ego just has to make somebody wrong so it can be right, make somebody guilty so it can be innocent. That's the insanity of the world that we look at, which is pretty much why, as Ken Wapnick teaches, and I'm going to be sending out that 2 + 2 = 4 thing. Well, today was the first day. Usually it comes in about 2 days, or 3 days, the entire series. So I'll wait until the entire series is in, and then I'll send it out. I know I send Ken Wapnick's out to you. I send it out to Sharon. I send it out to Zulma, Karen. So it'll be coming soon, but I think it's a very worthwhile audio from Ken. 2 + 2 = 5, which is the same thing as 1 + 1 = 1. Over to you, Myrna.
Yeah. Lynn put something up. What about algebra or geometry? I mean, that throws me completely. I don't even want to go there, but that's when you think about it, math is made very, very complicated, isn't it? But then again, it's a language, really. So they say it's tied to physics and so forth. But yeah, I never understood that language. And what you just described about having a picture of driving into another car, oh, that happens to me. I could be driving, like you say, 40 miles an hour and cars are coming the other way. And I think to myself, all that has to happen is somebody just has to turn, just turn and cut me. And we just, that would be the end. And I can almost hear the sounds of the crash. And, why do I do that to myself? I mean, and again, do we laugh at it? Yeah, of course we laugh at it because it is insane. Look at me, I'm still here. Look at you, Dove, we're still here. And we're going to be here for a long time. But yes, the ego is the insanity of the ego, takes us to places that we really don't want to be. And that causes pain. There's no question about it.
May I say something real quick?
Oh, please, yes.
What I was thinking of, well, first off, a couple of things, all right, is oh my gosh, I've had this on microphone this whole time. Oh my goodness, you've heard all my noises and everything. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Um, Myrna, that just happened to you. You just had that happen to you, that you were just driving along and somebody came out from somewhere and you swerved to try to stop, not hit them, and had ended up having a car crash. And then of course you're imagining the same thing happening again or something of that nature the next time you're out driving. And I used to do um, um, vehicle accident analysis, basically where you just go out and figure out, oh, he was coming 40 miles an hour and veered off at this, and you had these calculations, and that's what Dove was saying. It's like the calculation of if I'm 40 miles an hour and I hit him at 40 miles an hour, it'd be like hitting a wall at 80 miles an hour, and I'm like, yeah, it's all calculus. We're calculate, everything is calculated here. So anyway, that's really all I had to say. I just was thinking about that. It is really mathematics is a language that describes the dream in a beautiful way, but it just is funny. Anyway, I'll let you guys have it back.
Thanks, Lynn, because that really does help. It does. And you're right, bringing up the accident that I had. It was very fortunate. I mean, it was an accident that occurred. I told about it last week. I was driving along and a car pulled out of nowhere, out of a driveway where she was getting gas, actually. And in fact, it was a stop sign there. She didn't even stop at the stop sign. And she pulled out and I swerved, and her car was so terribly damaged that when I looked out the window, I was afraid to get out of my car. And when I got out of my car, I only had a couple of scratches on it. And then as it turned out, the aftermath was that she was suing me, and then I had to get a lawyer. But the lawyer was so wonderful, made it go away so quickly. And he was so nice and didn't even charge me, and everything was fine again. And so things don't have to have a horrible ending. I mean, and I learned from that. I really did. In fact, every time I get into, always, I make it a habit of asking Jesus to drive for me, meaning that I will be alert, of course, but if he's next to me and he's driving, and I always, and it's a habit, Jesus, please do the driving for me. And that really helps, because then I have no qualms about driving. And then when I had this accident and I asked Jesus what happened, you were at the wheel, why do we have this accident? And well, then I looked at it, I said, it was really a miracle. The outcome of that accident was a miracle, that I had absolutely, gone into a crash where I sustained no damages to my car whatsoever. My insurance rate didn't even go up, because it was deemed, the police report said that I had the right of way and whatever. But nevertheless, sometimes I like to look at miracles, all the miracles in my life, that I consider one of them, really. And when we realize that we have nothing to do with anything, really, and if we just trust, it works. It really does. And that helps me a lot when I think of the miracles in my life that I've received. That all the more makes me feel the love in my heart, because it shows how protected I am. The story where my dog fell into the canal, and he's 17 years old, and he swam 600 feet, which is the equivalent of 2 football fields, to safety. How could that have been? How was that possible? He's blind, he's deaf. How somebody found him and jumped in with their clothes and whatnot to pull him out. I mean, I thought he had drowned. I was beyond myself. And he was handed back to me, and the fact that I was even reunited with him was a miracle, because I thought he had drowned. That's the story within itself. But I think of all the miracles that occur, and if somebody tells me a story about themselves, I can point out the miracle in it as well to them. That, yes, I know that your wife is one particular friend. Your wife is in a state of vegetation in a hospital, but look what happened. Even so, you found such a wonderful facility where she's getting wonderful care, where she's getting, people that really, really do make a difference, that really care. There's a miracle tied even to tragedy sometimes, what we think is tragedy. And so when I can kind of now, using my own past experience and relate it to somebody else who is having difficulty, and showing them the miracle in it, it makes me feel really good. And you're always getting agreement that, yes, yes. And so I know that I'm headed in the right direction by speaking that way, coming from my heart. That's where it's coming from. And that's where the thoughts between our heads and our hearts differ, because if we can really use the thoughts and express the thoughts that are coming from within, then it all has to be right. It's all right. It's all truth. And that's where the love really is the greatest, because I feel somebody smiling down at me saying, yeah, keep going that way. So I turn it over to you, Dove.
You gotta laugh. You really gotta laugh. Oh, by the way, Regis showed up in the room here for about a minute. He came and he heard, and then he left. I also want to respond. Lynn wrote, remembering our high school algebra and geometry, Ken does actually say God knows nothing about higher mathematics, knows nothing about it. Because when you create, you don't need building blocks. Math or arithmetic or are building blocks. And, that goes right along with what I've been saying for a long, long time. In your qualitative mind, which is the mind of God, which is concerned with content, like love, like peace, which is eternal values that don't change. They are eternal. In your qualitative mind, it knows nothing about quantitative. The ego is our quantitative mind. Quantitative because it's based on time and space. Time and space being opposite sides of the same illusion. So the ego, in order to practice magic, in order to be a magician and to do tricks, it said, now you see him, but now you don't. And there was Hiroshima, and now it's gone. Or the guy was living, and now he's dead, and this and that. You need time and space to do all those tricks. God doesn't know anything about time and space. Nothing. Lives in the eternal now. And what is eternity but endless nows? Endless now. It's always now. If I live in the now, I'm not worried about tomorrow. I'm not going to be here. Or I'm not going to be, well, if you look at lesson 153, I think, yeah, it's 153, it says, no one leaves this world without their consent. Huh? Oh, you mean if I crossed over the yellow line and I hit the guy who's going 40 miles an hour and it's like hitting a brick wall at 80 miles an hour, I really wanted to do it? That's right. You're always in the right place at the right time. We live in a sea of synchronicity within an ocean of love. He said, well, who would want to do that? No. And when it's time to leave, you leave. You don't ask, well, why am I leaving? Why am I leaving hell? Let's see. A week from this Saturday, I'm going to be speaking again in Bogota, Colombia by Zoom on a Saturday morning. It'll be on YouTube, streaming on YouTube. And they asked me for a topic, and my topic is, above all else, I want to go home. Caller. Oh my God. I don't know who's calling me, but I'm not going to answer it. Above all else, I want to go home. And that's the exact same thing as above all else, lesson 28, I'm determined to see differently. So he tells you that, you have eyes that don't see, you're blind. You have ears that don't hear, you're deaf. And you have a brain that doesn't think, and you think that you're thinking. No, that's my ego wrong-mindedness that lives in the past. So he says, what you call seeing is not seeing. It's actually the ego going back into the past and digging up all your graves and knows where all the bodies are, and it keeps on like a revolving door, just keeps going back and forth and showing you all the dead bodies in your life, and says, well, don't worry about it. Sooner or later, you're going to join them. That's the ego's entire refrain, because no dream is a dream unless it includes death. But there is no death. He tells you that not only in the lesson I just mentioned, 153, tells you that in 163 and 164, tells you that over and over again. There is no death. But all dreams must come to an end. That's called death. So death is the fabric in which all dreams are woven from. All dreams must come to an end. But what is the dream here for? The dream is to learn lessons. Like, you come into this classroom to learn lessons. The biggest lesson, or one of the biggest lessons, is I'm not this body. I'm not separate from God. I am as God created me. I rest in God. In this world, how can you rest? You're going at 40 miles an hour. There's a yellow line that separates you from another guy going the other direction at 40 miles an hour. I better stay alert, baby. But, I like to say I practice open eye meditation. Now, in open eye meditation, and listening to you, Myrna, you must do the same thing, because you are aware of your thoughts. And the question is, if you're aware of your thoughts, who is it that's aware, and who is it that's having the thoughts? And that's the first time you begin to realize that you're into two different minds. One is your right mind, where you share with Jesus and the Holy Spirit, which is where the laws of God are. And the laws of God doesn't see anything in this world as real. The laws of God smile and laughs at the things that the wrong-mindedness takes very seriously. I mean, this guy's out to kill me. I'll kill him instead. You know, you gotta laugh. Simply gotta laugh. Back over to you, Myrna.
You know that it's said that if you keep laughing, it'll extend your life. Your life. Laughing is a very important element to living a life. Just keep laughing. You know, and sometimes I do. There are people that I can laugh with. We laugh heartily. Friends that I have for a long time, and I always feel that I love that laughing, that feeling of really laughing. When you're laughing, then the whole world changes. It really does. You know, it just feels so good to just laugh. And I read somewhere that it's such a healthy aspect to live by, you know, because it's great physically, it's great emotionally. It really it does work. So when you say you got to laugh, yes, God intends us to laugh. Sometimes, you know, I'll ask, speak of Jesus, do you want to hear something funny? Want to laugh? I always talk to Jesus. And I remember having a very bad time a few years ago, you know, and I was complaining to him about my childhood. And I said, look what I had to live through in my childhood. Look what I had to go through. Look what I had. And I'm speaking to Jesus. And the answer that he gave me really made me laugh. You know what the answer was? What are you complaining about? Look what happened to me. And I started laughing. You know, that was the answer that came through. What are you complaining about? You know. Anyway, yeah, laughing is a very important component to living a fruitful, happy life. It really is. It's very important because if we can sit back and laugh, and very often, you know, I speak to my friend Gloria. Gloria is my oldest friend, and we've come a long way together. You know, and you know, she had a very difficult time. Her husband left her with 3 kids, you know, and just left her for someone else without any money, without any caring whatsoever. And even that we look back and we laugh at, because then we laugh at some of the crazy relationships she had after that. You know, look at this stupid boyfriend I had, you know, after that. I think I would have learned my lesson. And we laugh at it. If you can laugh at a past, and we do all the time, really, because, you know, you come and you make stupid mistakes along the way. And unless you learn from them, you keep making them. And now we reached a point where we're both really on the same path, on a spiritual path. We've come a long way together. And yet we do laugh at our past mistakes, because if you can't do that, you know, once you do that, in fact, you realize that it's not real. That's what makes you realize that it isn't real. Another thing I wanted to mention, you talked about synchronicity. I like that phrase that you used. We live in a sea of synchronicity and an ocean of love. That's great. So I looked up what, you know, a synchronicity. What is the spiritual meaning of seeing synchronicity? And this is what it says. Synchronicities are not just coincidences meant to surprise and delight us, although they can and definitely do that. Rather, spiritual synchronicities are strategically orchestrated and perfectly aligned to deliver a message, provide guidance, or provide reassurance that we're on the right path. Isn't that great? So synchronicity is that we're a sea of synchronicity. Things are just happening that are meant to happen. That's what it tells me, really.
I got to ask you a question. Where did you find that? Because I mean, that's perfect, and I'm very surprised that it's written in some book. What book are you reading from?
All I do is Google it. I Google whatever I want, and the answers come up, and that's what I did. What is spiritual synchronicity? That's the explanation.
Perfectly, literally, everything has to be perfect.
Yeah.
When he says you cannot be anywhere except where God placed you, that means that we're absolutely meant to be here right now, speaking to each other. You know, the idea that I should be somewhere else is always like I should be somewhere else. No. That gets back to Zuma's the should game. Should I shoulda, I coulda, I woulda. No. That's the ego. Where you are is always perfect, and things that happen to you happen perfectly so you can learn the lesson that you came here for. Because you came to a classroom and he tells you in lesson 193, all things are lessons that God would have me learn. Although I was reading a Ken Wapnick commentary, or I forgot where I read it. Even though it says God would have me learn, God doesn't really want you to learn anything, by the way. All things are lessons that Holy Spirit wants me to learn. Holy Spirit wants me to learn that I am the Holy Son of God himself, that I am not this poor wretch that somehow, I'm being torn apart. I'm a victim, and none of that is true. Uh, uh, as you were speaking, it reminded me that I was listening to it just before that we started. Suzanne and I were on Friday, and Suzanne read from lesson 158. Today I learned to give as I receive. And that's very, very similar to lesson 126, which is all that I give is given to myself. So giving and receiving are the same. So whenever I say, well, why did this happen to me? That's the ego's knee-jerk reaction to everything. Why is this happening to me? Because I asked for it. Now, why would anyone ask for something that happens? There's a lesson for me to learn. That's why I came here. I came here to learn lessons. Now, when you say I came here, and we don't come here as spirit. We actually come here basically in what it's called a test crash dummy costume. Our test crash dummy costume. Like, all right, so Dove has this body, which is a costume, and he came here to test things out. It's like trial and error. I'll do this. It didn't work. We'll do that. Like last night, we were having Amy Anderson's freedom of forgiveness, and all of a sudden, her Zoom froze, and she couldn't. And then she left the room. She left Zoom, and then tried to get back in, and we didn't know whether she was whether it was Lynn's Zoom that somehow was blocking her, or somehow her Zoom wasn't working. So I did this thing called trial and error. I said, let Amy, we were on a phone call with her. Amy, try and get into Maureen's Muldoon's, where she teaches, by the way. Amy teaches at Maureen. Try and get into Maureen's Zoom. If your Zoom is working correctly, you'll be able to get in. She tried it and she couldn't get in, where she always gets in. Then we knew for sure that her Zoom wasn't working and that Lynn's was working perfectly. But that this world is trial and error. You come here, to try out different things, so to learn what the truth is. And anything that brings you to peace, anything that gives you the peace of God, where you're resting in God, where you're resting in peace, even though this upside down world says rest in peace is for the dead. No, rest in peace is for the living, not for the dead. Back over to you. There's about 2 minutes left. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, you just said before that God really doesn't know anything, doesn't know any of this. And God loves us so much. That's why he gave us the Holy Spirit, the communication that we can, right. The Holy Spirit knows, but God doesn't. And God says, okay, I want you back, and created the Holy Spirit for us. What could be better than that? And the offshoot is Jesus and all those spiritual teachers who come into our life to help us along the way, and by giving us the Course in Miracles. I mean, Jesus was given Helen got the Course in Miracles from Jesus. Think about it. I mean, it's just we get all the help we need. We really do, and when we ask for it, we get it. It's that much greater and helpful.
Yeah.
Along our path.
I'm going to close out with, in the inimitable words of Teddy Poppy, remember, in this world, you are the test crash dummy. You gotta laugh. You gotta laugh.
Yeah, I see Regis just put up those 2 hearts. I have to tell you, your ears must have been ringing, Regis, because I tuned in early just to hear you. I love listening to you, Regis. I really do. You really calm me before my talk. You do. You have that ability to do that. In fact, I once asked Lynn, I think I asked you if Regis was an ordained minister, because you speak like one, really. So I really love to listen to you. I want you to know you disappointed me. You weren't here today. So I'll catch you next week. Anyway, feel good. Love you all. Bye.
Hi, Audrey, Regis, Lynn, Karen, Sharon, everybody all over the world. You gotta laugh.
Bye.
Thanks, you guys. Love you both so much. And
love
just so grateful for wow, how we are all together here. This is just this is really the dawning of a new age that's brought us together. It's something I've waited my whole life for. So so grateful for you all.
You don't realize what a blessing you are. You are
There was a Kabbalah word.
there's a blessing.
Yeah.
You,
It was meant to be. We wrote it into the script.
right,
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Laughing at it all. That's
I
what
love it.
it is.